So hi everyone, welcome to the Path of Research, Demystifying the Research Process, hosted by Concordia University Irvine's Schroeder Library. So today we're going to be going over the path of research. First, what is research? There are no shortcuts to research, and the research experience will ease with practice as you gain more experience. So what is research? Research starts with a question, then it collects data, summarizes, synthesizes it. It's not just the summary of that research, but it's also the analysis of the data collected in consideration of your question, as well as from the analysis drawing a conclusion and recommendations about what this means to your research question and the world in general. So what are some bad approaches to research? Some bad approaches to research are only summarizing your data. It doesn't really explore the topic with any depth or analysis. It doesn't advance knowledge on the topic, and it doesn't really ask any deeper questions. Now, depending on the paper, some of these papers may not be official research papers, in which case you're basically doing those, but those are more of just a paper, it's less research. What are some first steps for research? First steps include understanding the assignment, length of paper, teacher's requirements, scope of the topic, kind of how much and how deep to take the research. Some research may be more along the lines of that summary, but that will depend on the scope of your topic. For example, if you're doing a literature review, you're not really doing any of your own personal research. You're more researching what others have done and then summarizing it and then drawing conclusions based on their research. But as an example of that. Next steps would be picking a topic of, if you're unfamiliar with the subject, you could consult reference materials, including websites or encyclopedias. At this stage, Wikipedia can be a great source just to kind of get a basic understanding. Again, you don't want to recite it in your research, but just for personal understanding, Wikipedia can be a great source. You can check class notes and see what you've gone over in class, what's interested you. You can consider what controversies or points of debates are related to the subject matter that you're discussing or interested in. Things to avoid for your topic. You'll want to avoid a vague topic. Too vague of a topic will make the scope of your research hard to fit within the limitations of your paper, while adequately covering the points that you'll need to for your paper. You also don't want to make your topic too complex where you can't really find anything on your research topic. That will again get to our third point of making the topic too difficult to research, whether it's too complex, too vague, too specific, just not something that there is sufficient research on at this point in time anyway. So you'll want to take these things into consideration as you're choosing your topic. And then once you have a general idea of your topic, you'll want to finalize your topic, which you'll want to find something that is interesting to you, depending on the assignment that your professor has assigned. You'll want it to be something that is original, that you have something original to say about the topic. That again meets the criteria for your assignment. If your professor has already given you a sort of general topic, or if they've given you free rein to choose whatever interests you, making sure your topic fits within that assignment criteria. And you want to make sure it's possible to research. One research appointment I had where someone was looking for research on like cat cafes happening in Japan and other countries. Super interesting topic, but not really any peer-reviewed materials on that. So not really something that can be researched at this point in time. So again, you want to make sure it's something that is possible and realistic to be able to find research and the type of research that you need to find on it. So once you've finalized your topic, our next step is going to be looking for sources. To start looking for sources, you want to determine what resources will be best for you to use, whether it's databases on the subject, will you need to use books, do you need to use articles that were within the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Will you need to use a mix of sources? Again, all depending on the criteria that your professor has set up for you with the assignment that you have. So now we'll kind of go over the research part of, we have our library webpage here. From here, you can use either this one search on this main page, or you can go to research tools, research databases, or research guides as well, to get a sort of overview of the items that are available both in library and through open access. Here we have the list of databases that you can choose from depending on, again, the type of research you're doing. Most popular ones are our two at the top, EBSCO and JSTOR. These are both really interdisciplinary databases that have a whole bunch of cool resources for you. And then that third one we have is Nexus Uni. That has a lot of great business and legal sources depending on the topic and the scope of the topic that you're researching for your assignment. We also have additional databases in our A to Z databases found at that top point. This is all the databases, whether they're in EBSCO, JSTOR, any of the other ones further down on that list that we didn't get to, that you have access to, that you can use to look through and find the research on your topic. And then we also have our research guides, which are also just kind of summaries of some of those different databases as it pertains to the different topics. For example, under nursing, you're going to find a whole bunch of the databases that we've found to be most useful for nursing students. Depending on your topic, there may be resources outside of those suggested databases, but our LibGuides can be a great starting point for finding the best databases. We also have additional video tutorials that go over just kind of how to use our databases, how to find peer-reviewed resources, all the kind of main points of researching if you need a little refresher course on how to make use of those different databases and some of the tips and tricks that we can use when we're doing our research. So looking for sources. As you start looking for sources and start to find sources, you'll want to make sure you screen for reliability. One option we have for this is the CRAP test, which is currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. You'll want to make sure it is a timely article for the information. It's not one that has become irrelevant through time as we've learned more. So ideally, it should be within the last 5 years. If it's more on the literary terms, sometimes you can go back to 10, 20. If it's history, sometimes you can kind of have that currency goes a little bit further, but in more of the medical and the sciences, usually we want to stick within those last 5 years unless we're looking at it from a historical perspective. You want to look at relevance of, does the information in this article, is it applicable to your topic and how you're trying to write about this and within the scope of what you need to cover within this essay? Or is it just kind of completely unrelated to your particular topic and scope of what you're looking for? Lastly, second to lastly, we also want to look at the authority of the source of the information. Is this a source that is applicable and that has the authority to be able to make these claims? Or is this just someone who we don't really know how reliable they are? This can be helpful to kind of Google the author, see how many books have they read or written. Is this just a first book? Have they written 20, 30 on the same topic? What are their degrees in? Are they being hired by a company that makes them or might bias them? Another one is accuracy, and part of this can kind of come with the authority of how reliable, truthful, or correct is this content. Articles with that peer-reviewed mark are going to have a perceived higher level of accuracy, where they're more likely to be accurate than one that was just kind of paid for by a company to be published and published. So you'll want to kind of check through accuracy as best as you can. And then also just purpose of, again, what is the reason this information exists? Is it to educate? Is it to persuade? That's where kind of looping back to that authority comes from of, is this being paid for by a company who has any agenda in getting this information out and circulating? So another thing to look for in sources is that peer-reviewed marker that we talked about. Peer-reviewed means it's been reviewed by other authorities in that field. It's going to be attributed with a higher level of accuracy and validity. It also can be helpful to look for books published by academic publishers versus non-academic publishers, where there's a little bit more authority for any academic claims as opposed to something that's been written just for other purposes other than scholarly academic work. So kind of looking into that of who's publishing this work as well. Last thing we're going to go over is the structure of a scholarly article. This can be something that is helpful to look over as you're finding your results to see, is this actually a scholarly article, or is this maybe not a scholarly article? Scholarly articles are going to be better for research in most cases. And scholarly articles can be identified through their use of an abstract, introduction, background history or literature review, the methodology of their research, results, an argument, critique, or discussion, a conclusion, followed by a works cited / references. So first thing you're going to want to look to identify is the title and author, where you'll see title, author should be listed right underneath. And another good indicator that this is a scholarly work is underneath that, you can even see some of the universities and groups that their authors are associated with, to give it a little bit more credibility, that these aren't just random people off the street. These are people who are associated with universities, healthcare corporations, different groups that will lend the author a greater sense of authority. You can also find the citation information of what journal has published this. Is this a well-known journal or a journal that is lesser known? And how does that affect the perception of the information, just to make sure we're getting the highest quality information we can. Also find the abstract, where we can kind of see that condensed version of, it mentions the method, it mentions some of the results, and the whole conclusion analysis of those results as well, which we'll see in a larger form in the article as a whole, which will help us identify it as a scholarly article versus a more general article that might cover opinions or something. So we can also see the keywords that have been used to help find this article, and maybe used to help find articles like it, if it was one that was applicable to our research and that we wanted to find more like that. Keywords may or may not be included. It will depend on whether the author has included them or not. But they may also just show up in the database as well, depending on which database you're looking into. So first we have our introduction, where they're going to kind of introduce the topic, tell a little bit about it, why it's a problem, that kind of thing. Up here again, background, which we'll go over again, the kind of, why is this a problem, what's going on, how long has this been an issue, all that kind of thing to give the sort of why should we care aspect of the research topic. Here we'll hear the methodology. Methodology can also help you kind of look into the accuracy of a research problem or paper. For example, if you see they have a super small sample size, may not be a good indicator for the accuracy of their research, whereas if they have a larger sample size, that might be a good indicator. For example, we see here that they say 91% of adults, but in this exact list or small paragraph, we don't see how much is that 91%. Is that 91% of 10 adults? Is that 91% of 1,000 plus adults? Looking into that sample size is going to help you indicate whether this has been a good scholarly article versus a lower quality scholarly article, and just kind of the validity of that research, as well as any additional information they may provide about the sample, of if it's a wide sample, if it's a smaller, more targeted population. Looking for all that information can help guide your research and verify the authority that this article may or may not have. Next thing you're going to look for is the results. The results are going to go over just kind of what came of the study. It's not going to get too much into the analysis of it. That'll come later. This is just kind of the section where they go, here was what we did, here was what we saw, without kind of going into why it matters or what to do about it. That will come in the next section, also known as the discussion, where we kind of go into the why it matters and what to do about it, depending on, again, the scope of your topic and what your topic is as a whole. Finally, we have the conclusion. Conclusion is, again, a sort of summary of the article of a whole. We'll kind of touch upon the results and the discussion of the problem and kind of what to do, where to go from here. It may bring up any of those sort of holes in the sample size that were kind of mentioned earlier that we can look for as we're reading our article and analyzing how accurate or valid it may be. And then again, we have the references. References can be a great place to find additional research to add to your own topic as well. If there's one where they cite or say, yes, this is perfect for mine, you can look and find that original resource and cite the original work, depending on, again, the scope of, if your professor said it needs to be within the last 5 years and it's not, maybe you can't, but maybe you can cite new articles citing the original one. But there is a special citation format for that, so make sure you're citing it correctly if you do that. We also can just kind of see the credibility from these original resources kind of transfers on to a limited extent to this new one. If they're citing high sources, their research is going to be taken with a higher sense of credibility, just like yours will, as you cite these more well-known, more authoritative sources who have studied more into the different topics and have actually done the research that you'll need to cite, depending on, again, your topic and the scope of your assignment. So once you've started finding your research, next thing will be organizing it. There's a number of ways to organize your research, so this is ultimately just a matter of what works best for you. There's Zotero, which I've really enjoyed using. It's free, a plugin. You go ahead, plug it in, get it set up, and then from there you can just save the files directly to Zotero. It'll, when possible, save the PDF, and then you can annotate it, highlight it, make little sticky notes on it with notes to be able to come back and find things as you're going through it later. This has been super helpful for a research project I've been starting on, where I know I can highlight quotes and statistics that I want to come back for when I start writing my analysis of it. Alternatively, you could also use Google Drive or just your computer to just kind of download the individual files and just kind of put them in files, whether it's again Google Drive just on your computer desktop, whatever works best for you. Other option that I tend to lean towards if I'm not using Zotero is the working bibliography, where you just kind of have a paper either on, again, Google Drive or directly on your computer, and you just kind of make a citation list. You could even turn it into an annotated bibliography by just kind of jotting down a few notes just for you about what that particular essay or article went over and whether or not it's going to be something that's applicable to your research and maybe how you want to use it if you want to use it. Any of that kind of information to just kind of jog your memory as you start re-looking over your assignments and research and what you've read as you have to actually start writing the paper and using the quotes and research. So, and we also have some additional resources as you start doing your research. We have links to different resources, both through the library, outside of the library. We have MLA Handbook for Writers and Research Papers, which I was just using for an in-class instruction earlier today, so it is currently in the library. We have Writing Commons links, as well as we have research appointments with a librarian that you can book through our homepage at www.cui.edu/library, and we can go over any research questions you have together, whether it's citation, finding sources, databases, any question, no matter what it is, big or small, we can work through that together and make sure you find the answers you need to be successful. That is the end of our workshop. We can go ahead and stop recording.